And so with all of that being said, we're going to jump right in. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Emily Wanis, and I'm the Engagement Director for Algalita Marine Research and Education. This event here, College Perspectives, is a part of a larger spring series that we host through our Wayfinder Society for Environmental Education free online program. And so this College Perspectives event today is tackling plastics through community organizing, where we're going to be showcasing 3 panelists who have experience as college students, how they organize their peers, their colleagues, as well as their community. So thank you all for joining us. Thanks for being here. And I'm really excited to get this going with our 3 panelists today. Like I said, this event is a part of a larger series. We kicked off this series last month with our Researching Plastics Through Science and Sociology event, which was really incredible and eye-opening to hear directly from college students, 3 of them from across the world, who are championing and going into researching ways to address plastic pollution in their local community and beyond. And so we were able to hear them talk about imposter syndrome, where they got access to funding, what was that exact research that they're working on, and how they were even able to access that to begin with. And so tomorrow, when I send out this recording, I will share out that recording from the February 19th event as well. But I do want to focus our efforts on today's topic, tackling plastics through community organizing. And just before we begin, to make sure we're all on the same page, we have some community guidelines that I always like to go through during events like this. If you feel comfortable, please put your video on. It kind of personalizes this very large global community that we have. However, if you don't feel comfortable, no worries. And please mute yourself when not speaking. But of course, if at any time you have a question that comes up, you can unmute and bring it up then. Or you can wait until the very end to bring up any questions you have for our panelists. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, you can just type in the chat questions that come up that you want me to ask the panelists. And feel free to use the chat beyond that as well. So if you felt comfortable, you could introduce yourself in the chat with your name, your school or location, and what interests you most about today's event. So for me, my name is Emily. I'm here in Long Beach, California. And what's most interesting to me about this event is hearing directly from college students who are paving the way for other high school and other youth to get engaged in these topics. So I invite you to introduce yourself in the chat, while I do a warm welcome to our 3 panelists for today's event. First, I would like to introduce Diego Arreola Fernández, who is originally from Mexico, but is studying in Canada. And so he has a unique approach addressing these concepts and community organizing in 2 different countries. And then we have Pius Seda from Malawi, who has a number of different initiatives that he is using to connect farmers and connecting sustainable resources with other people who are interested in his community, accessing those. And so he's this big community weaver, and I can't wait to hear from him. And then lastly, we have Sulaiman Abubakar Umar, who is in Northeast Nigeria, who is working on community education, localizing it within his native language, and so much more. And so I don't want to give too much away, but I do like to brag about these 3 individuals because they are so inspiring. I will say too that these 3 individuals was awarded our last year's student mini grant. And so they're going to be able to talk more about how they leverage those funds. And that might inspire you to want to apply for our student mini grant that closes next month, April 15th. And so without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can start the Q&A with our panelists. Awesome. Jennifer, thanks for being here. Happy to have you. And Julio and anyone, and Sionin, hello. And of course, anyone who is watching this recording. And so with that, Diego, I'm going to ask you the first question, and this one's easy. Just introduce yourself. How did you first get involved in this movement? And what are some examples or techniques that you use in community organizing?
Yeah, for sure. Can you hear me, Emily? All good?
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you for for all of that and for your lovely introduction. And yes, so I don't have to introduce my name again. You already introduced that, neither where I'm from or where I'm studying. So just for context, I'm on my last year of college here at the University of Toronto. I am doing international relations and economics, but focusing a lot on climate policies and environmental policies and agreements. And this is I something that I wasn't planning on focusing on when I was in high school. Like I was more interested in general diplomacy, in law, but not on pursuing work in environmental conservation or climate action. And that's something that changed in 2019 when I was 16. And I went to this boot camp in Vancouver called the Ocean Heroes Boot Camp. And it happened in Vancouver, British Columbia. And it was a life-changing experience. So, long story short, it was hosted by Captain Planet Foundation, Al Galida, and other NGOs, I think funded by the UN as well. And it was aimed at having young people from all over the world coming and learning about plastic pollution, ocean conservation, and how they could start doing campaigns in their countries focusing on specific single-use plastics, and then doing different strategies to either raise awareness or working with businesses or maybe lobbying for change in like local municipalities or national legislation. It was really, 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 really cool. And it changed my life completely because I learned how I could then apply. I was very passionate about public speaking and debate and like advocacy, but I didn't know I could start doing work that could have a tangible impact in Mexico City, where I was from. And then I came back after this bootcamp with so much resources on how to mobilize, how to do a campaign, how to raise funds, and then also with some support from these NGOs that participated. So that was amazing. And since then, I've been working on that. That was 5 years ago. And then I started a nonprofit organization, and I have been having some projects to reduce single-use plastics that I could talk about more later on. But I would say that's how I started, and the most important tools that I got was, first of all, that confidence that I could start doing something as a young person. Then also the resources, like educational resources on how to do it and like step-by-step guide. And then also the financial resources was also really helpful.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Diego. And I'm sure being from Mexico City, where there's, such a large population and so much work being done, that you kind of being introduced to these topics, not only bringing them back to your community, but continuing on with university in Canada. So thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. Sulaiman, if you wanted to go next and share your name, what school you go to, and just more overall, how you first got into this movement addressing plastic pollution and related issues. Oh, it looks like you're on mute.
Yeah,
There we
exactly.
go.
So, yeah, exactly. So, thank you so much for having me here and for the wonderful introduction, Emily, Kathy, and also our attendees. So, I am Abubakar Sulaiman Umar. No, I'm the founder of the Concern Youth Initiative for Climate Action here in northeastern Nigeria. So, our project focus on educating our communities about the dangers of the plastic pollution and promoting sustainable waste management practice. So what sparks my passion was, growing up, in a community that is left behind. I've witnessed firsthand the devastating, impact of environmental degradation, which include plastic pollution on my community. So, witnessing this plastic, pollution of our rivers and the harm it caused to wildlife, deeply, affected me. So these are first-hand experiences, sparked my passion for environmental conservation and inspire me to actively seek ways, to address these challenges. So by the way, I went to Gombe State University. I studied botany there and I graduated 2024. I did my 1 year mandatory National Youth Service Corps, which is, a scheme for every graduate here in Nigeria. And I will be starting my, master's studies, hopefully this year, September, here in environmental management. Also, I'm a member of the United Nations Department of Global Communication, Civil Society Youth Representative. So we address the United Nations Department of Global Communication on how to better engage, with young people on the issues, around on how to better engage young people on issues related to civil society and youth engagement in the UN affairs and decision makings. I am also a member of the UNICEF Generation Unlimited Nigeria Young People Action Team, which I served for 1.5 years, and my tenure have elapsed, some months back. So this is just a little bit about me and the work I do here in northeastern Nigeria, specifically Gombe State. And then thank you all for joining us here, and it is very amazing for me to be here with you all, by all the way from West Africa, Nigeria, and northeastern Nigeria, one of the most marginalized, underserved, and left behind community. So thank you so much for having me here, and I look forward to a grateful conversation.
Thank you so much for that great introduction, sharing more about your work and how this passion of this work came to be from the very beginning. And something that really inspires me when you share all of this is how many different global resources, whether it's through the United Nations or through organizations like ours, that you see, and you want to leverage those resources to bring them back into your community, which, like you said, there is such a high need. So thank you for that hard work. And then lastly, Pius, if you wanted to introduce yourself similarly, what first got you into this work, and then we'll go a little bit deeper into programming a little bit later. But the floor is open to you, Pius.
Okay, so I am Pius Seda, and I'm from the University of Malawi, a student in education, in my final year of studies. So basically, I've been so passionate to tackle environmental issues, and I would say my passion started way back when I was very young. So growing up and seeing different challenges, waste management issues, air pollution, and just different things we have been facing in Malawi, issues of thin plastics. I've always wanted to act, to do something about it. So that is what led me to be involved in plastic pollution, in tackling plastic pollution. Yeah, so in short, that's my background.
Thank you so much, Pius. And yeah, something that's similar amongst all three of you is having this lived experience of seeing plastics interact within the society, seeing that there's issues with it and want to address it. And I think that that's a key role for anyone being within this movement. So thank you so much, Pius. And so now going a little bit deeper, and Diego, if you don't mind, we'll go through this same pattern like we did the first one. What does your programming look like at your nonprofit or your project? What are you doing? I know what you're doing, but I want you to share with everybody else, like in more details, the need that you're wanting to meet and how you do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can talk a little bit about my nonprofit, and then I also focus on a project that I did last summer that is very much relevant to this conversation because it's focused on plastic pollution. But yeah, so on the one hand, as I was saying earlier, when I went to this conference in 2019, Ocean Heroes Bootcamp, and then went back to Mexico, I was still a high school student. And I received all these opportunities, this financing, these resources, and this motivation to start becoming much more aware and an advocate. And I realized that there was a lot of misinformation in Mexico City, in my community. There was a lot of indifference towards these problems. Also because with so many other problems going on, insecurity, development-related problems, air pollution, some of them very intense impacts of climate change and pollution as well. Sometimes plastic pollution and being aware of zero waste practices, etc., plays like it's not in everyone's minds as it should be. So that's something that we wanted to address and make sure that with some friends and my family that we could also bring these same opportunities and resources and like this conversation and spread it more across young people and children. So that's why we started Green Speaking, which is the nonprofit organization I'm talking about. So it's with this idea of sparking this conversation and then encouraging more children, young people to start developing campaigns and start doing something about it, just even if it's doing a school project or advocating for a certain policy or advocating for the reducing the use of single-use plastics at their school, community, etc. That can just help contribute positively and that everyone is involved somehow in climate action or the fight against plastic pollution. So that's the goal, and we've been working on it for 5 years, hosted some conferences, some workshops, really, really passionate. Obviously, this has been possible thanks to the support of organizations such as Captain Planet Foundation and Algalita. As you mentioned, I was a recipient of the Kamini Student Award last year. So extremely helpful for all of the work we do because it's all nonprofit, it's all volunteering from college and high school students. So it definitely helps us for the things that in real life we do have to pay for to make things happen. So it's really, really nice. And yeah, and I'm gonna go short on the other thing, but the project that I did last summer, that was with a professor here at my university, at the University of Toronto, and we looked at how we could reduce the use of single-use plastics in grocery stores here in Toronto. And that's something I'm very proud of because it's one of the first opportunities I've had to actually employ more research-based, a research-based approach into the fight against plastic pollution. And so we looked at reducing the use of produce bags and the packaging that products owned by the grocery stores use. So for example, Walmart has great value, or like other grocery stores has their own brands. So trying to reduce the plastic that they use because they're in control of that, right? So that's what we looked at. We found some very interesting things that I could also talk about later on. But yeah, I would say those are the two things.
That is awesome, Diego. Thank you for that. And you know what? Actually, now is an okay time if you did want to talk a little bit more about what those findings were from that research.
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did this. So it was 4 months. It's still not that we're still in like the data analysis part and outreach and sending like recommendations and policy briefs to businesses and the local government. But the idea was to get statistics on how many produce bags are used by customers on a visit to the grocery stores, for which type of produce items, if they use them for all of their items or just for some, and then also looking at the supply of produce bags, how many dispensers, if there's reusable produce bags available. And I think the three most important findings was that the first one, so many bags are used in one day. I think the mean was 2005. So approximately 2,000 bags are used in one store one day in one city. So then when we scale it to like many more cities and the entire world and a year, it's a humongous amount of produce bags that are used. And in a country like Canada, which is a developed country, first world, you would assume recycling rates are better, good. No, like almost 97% of these bags go straight into landfill or the environment because they're very low density, they break apart easily, they get contaminated, so they don't get recycled that easily. So it's all this plastic produced going straight into the garbage. So that was astonishing to find. We also saw that like the majority of customers use them for produce items that don't really need a produce bag, like bananas or oranges or avocados, which you can literally just put into your cart because you're not gonna eat the peel. So that was also a bit disheartening. But the third thing that we found is that the majority of customers are willing to use reusable produce bags and willing also to pay for them. So that was a good finding. And we did a pilot in which we introduced some interventions. And we also saw that with signs across the produce aisle and with displaying affordable reusable produce bags, the sales of reusable bags like quadrupled. So we could see that with more interventions and with businesses putting in effort, you can see that the number of produce bags can be reduced.
Yeah, no, that is really incredible to hear those findings, because it sounds like through education, through offering alternatives readily available to these shoppers, they will most likely, hopefully, take that latter option, which it sounds like that's what they were doing. And I hope that we see more of that across the world in the coming years, because exactly like you said, whether it's a developing country or developed country, no matter where in the world, we're all impacted by plastics. But no matter what, none of us have enough infrastructure to actually recycle the amount of plastic that's used, which is a big part of your point, Diego. So thank you for adding that in there.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, Sulaiman, if you wanted to, go a little bit more in depth on how you have worked to educate your community, maybe how you use the mini grant funds to make that impact. And yeah, just sharing a little bit more detail about your projects. That would be awesome to hear.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you so much for this question. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm the founder of the Concern Youth Initiative for Climate Action. So my community, my organization was born out of the out of the current situation we are facing here in northeastern Nigeria regarding the climate change in general, specifically plastic pollution. So when the Algalita Foundation's mini grants come in, my research are focused from the need to find practical and culturally appropriate solution to the plastic pollution crisis within my community. So my project began with identifying the key source of plastic waste and understanding the community's perceptions and the attitude toward the plastics. So we've conducted surveys. We held, focused group discussions, and observed local waste management practices. So based on this initial research, we developed, educational materials, organize workshops on the waste reduction and recycling. And currently, we are exploring the feasibility of, establishing a community-based recycling program. So this is just a little about my project, and I can tell already it is a success. Thank you.
Wow, that is wonderful to hear. I loved your multi-pronged approach to this issue, where you're wanting to talk about so many different solutions like alternatives or recycling. And so that is a really sound approach. And you bring up a really important point when we talk about community organizing, is having meetings, scheduling these moments where you get to hear from your community, and then that guides the work that you're doing. And that is such an integral part of this. So I appreciate that. And I'm curious, from the beginning of your work to the end, how have you seen the people's minds change around this issue? Do you see they're making different decisions now, or what has that been like?
Yeah, exactly. So I can say, community organizing, has been vital. So for my own work, we rely on local leaders and volunteers to spread awareness and mobilize, action for cleanup drives and workshops. So, seeing my community members, actively participate in cleanup drives, and adopt new waste reduction habit has been incredibly rewarding. And when residents, started asking for more workshops and sharing what they learned with their families, I knew we were making a difference. So thank you.
Yeah. And I believe, over this past year when we've talked, you have shared that where you live is pretty rural and not very much connected to a lot of the resources in larger cities. And so the fact that you're bringing this to such to an area that really wants to have these solutions, wants and needs this education to make sound decisions. And so again, going back to this idea of bringing on all these global resources and education and then bringing it localized, which is really incredible. So thank you for sharing that, Sulaiman.
Yeah, no, so thank you so much. You know, when it comes to local communities and work like this, so if you want to get the attention or the heart of your community, firstly, you have to use, you know, the local language. You have to use the local approach. You have to see the community, how they work, how they relate to each other, how they, you know, how they practice their different, you know, religious, either Muslims going to mosques or Christians going to, you know, church. So in a low level community like this, for you to have to be successful in your project, you know, there, because there is a lot of skepticism in the community. So you have to use, you know, all these local approaches of using local languages, using, you know, local radio stations, going to mosques, going to church and going to market in order to, you know, get the attention of the people and also to show them, you know, this is this and this is that. So this we are doing for ourselves, for our community and for our, you know, younger generations to come, not, you know, for only our own benefit, but also for the generations to come. So, you know, that is why we use local approach, you know, to find solutions to these pressing challenges of plastic pollution we are facing here.
Yeah, it's almost like if we didn't have folks like you who are disseminating and translating this information for your local community, that how relevant would this work be if we're not getting it to the communities that you need it? And the solution is being culturally relevant, which is exactly what you're talking about, being place-based, culturally relevant, you among the community being that messenger and being that leader. So that's incredible to hear. All right, and then Pius, it looks like, left us, I'm sure because of network capabilities. And so with Diego and Sulaiman, who are still on, we'll still continue going through the questions, and then we'll hope that he's able to return when he's able. So my next question that I want to ask you, and Diego, I'll ask you first, is you both kind of mentioned this, but what is in your work and in your experience, what is a lot of the resistance that you get from community members and your classmates? Like, what does that resistance and those hurdles look like? And then how have you overcome them? And I can rephrase that if you want me to rephrase it differently.
No, that's perfect. So hurdles from like pushback from community members, right?
Yeah, like what has been the big hurdles you've had to overcome, realizing that some of these people you're working with might be, you know,
Yeah.
still not where you would like them to be, you
Yeah,
know,
no,
if that's really.
absolutely. I have two examples that I would love to talk about. So the first one is, oh, this one is a bit not as significant as the other, but is that the project that I did last summer that I talked about with the grocery stores and the produce bags. It's called Garbage-Less Groceries, and I did it with this professor, Dr. Chelsea Rockman, and she works here at the University of Toronto. She's from the States, very, very passionate and experienced in plastic pollution, and she has this NGO called the UFT Trash Team, and so they work at the University of Toronto, and they were the ones that funded this project with another organization here from Toronto as well. But when I was telling all friends and acquaintances and everything working with them, it's like, oh, the UFT trash team, and like hearing the word trash, they would sometimes make fun of it, which is just like an inherent, it should not mean a lot, but it also kind of like hints that a lot of people think of this type of work and like waste diversion and like zero waste and tackling plastic pollution. They don't give a lot of relevance to it and a lot of importance on how important it is for reducing pollution and for addressing climate change and environmental degradation and the impacts that it has on biodiversity. So that's just something that I thought of when you mentioned with like classmates and students. But a more significant pushback is when we're actually in the stores, there was a lot of skepticism, as Sulaiman was talking about. We had a lot of customers, when so through our methodology, we had these interventions and we put these signs in the stores that said, do you really need this produce bag? And we showed pictures of avocados and bananas and oranges, because you don't really need a produce bag for those. And then we also had another sign with a very big sea turtle saying, when you reduce your use of produce bags, you're helping wildlife. So kind of like a more positive messaging. And I was sometimes standing there taking surveys and like trying to interview people to get their perspective on what they use produce bags for, if they would go for alternatives, etc. And often we were collaborating with a grocery store, by the way, and we got permission from their senior leadership and the managers of the stores. But there's a lot of staff working in the grocery store. So oftentimes, even though like, we knew we had permission from the leadership and the staff and the managers, the staff would come and they would show not a lot of receptiveness, or they wouldn't love precisely the project, which was interesting because, I remember we were collaborating with this grocery store, but a lot of the staff was like, oh, like, but what is actually the problem with plastic? Like, what is the alternative? Like, without plastic, how am I supposed to like carry the produce around? And you could see that it was a very politicized issue. And I know that in the States it's very politicized with like everything climate and environmental related. And I could learn firsthand that here in Canada is getting much more politicized too and polarized. So, which it's in my mind is ridiculous that it's like that. So yeah, so that was interesting. And a lot of customers would be the same. Like they would see the sign, they would see me standing there, and they would immediately think like, oh, I do not support this, I do not approve of this, and even get like mad. So that was interesting, but we still didn't let that crumble our morale, and we just continued, and we still saw a lot of significant results. So that was very encouraging for sure.
It's really encouraging to hear. And it's true. I mean, there's going to be a lot of pushback when we're discussing this because we're asking people to change their behavior. This convenience culture that we live in, that's intimidating for people to think like, I need to change, make these simple switches. Or maybe they're just so worried about this issue that they can't even address it. They're like, I don't even want to be thinking about this, because I think for a lot of people in different parts of the world, there's the luxury of when we throw something away, it means away because it's out of our mind. But for many other parts of the world, away might be in their backyard. And so I could see that they're being pushed back there. And it's nice, especially that you touched on the positive messaging and the positive reinforcement, because something that us working within this movement at Algalita and like the movement as a whole, gosh, it can be so negative. It seems like there's not a lot of hope, and our approach is wanting to encourage action and the best way to encourage action isn't through fear, it's through positive messaging and reinforcement. And so I love that you touched on that. So thank you for that. Perfect. So, and then I do believe that I saw, oh, he left again. Okay. We'll keep waiting for Pius, but Sulaiman, if you wanted to go next, and what is challenges you faced and how have you overcome them when working with community members or classmates of yours?
Yeah, exactly. So thank you very much for these questions. And I think Pius also is in the waiting room. I don't know if he is admitted or not. Yeah. So maybe you can try checking it.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
It looks like still joining.
exactly. So thank you very much once again. So when it comes to for me, colleagues, student, classmate in the school, when this grant comes in, I'm already rounding up my studies. So before I've started the project, I've already graduated. But my challenges, maybe I can say it, with the community where I work here. So as mentioned earlier, when we have started the discussion, how marginalized my community it is. So I can say limited internet access, and unreliable electricity supplied have been, significant obstacles. So for me to overcome, these challenges, we've utilized community centers with more, reliable power. We also relied on local community leaders to disseminate information, as I said earlier, and also explored, alternative methods of communications, such as, face-to-face interactions and community meetings. I've also learned to be adaptable and creative, in finding solutions that work within the constraint of our environment. So thank you.
Yeah, no, that is incredible. And I really like, again, this multi-pronged approach and realizing that there might be limitations, but I know that working with you, many cases, it's been you are translating these digital documents, printing them into physical ones, and then passing those out to the community, which, seems so simple, but it's so vital because that's where that grassroots community-based approach comes from. And I wanted to uplift Shannon, who wrote a really sweet thing in the chat to you, Sulaiman, who Shannon is an incredible educator who is really big within our movement. So Shannon, thank you for this. And she said, so great, Sulaiman, being acutely aware of the community culture, being respectful and responsive, allowing the community to see the greater vision, encouraging engagement. And I loved what she wrote because, again, allowing the community to be a part of this vision so they feel that they're a part of this, that they have ownership over this, that they are making an impact. So I just absolutely loved what she had said and wanted to uplift that.
Yeah, exactly. I just saw the comment. So, thank you very much for this comment. And, it is all our responsibility to be an agent of change for our various communities, no matter how the community it is, no matter how, hard it is. So it is all our responsibility and this is our work. So thank you very much for acknowledging what I've been doing, and I look forward to do more in the nearest future. Eneli, I hope I've said the name correctly. Yeah.
Perfect. How sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. And so I do believe I saw Pius come in. Pius, can you hear me? You might still be connecting, which is okay. I'm still holding out hope for you to return, but we'll just keep on moving with my next question being to Diego. And so, Diego, you've already done so much work. You have so many goals that you have shared some with me, and I love your vision. And so I'm wondering, how do you envision your project with Green Speaking and other community events that you host? How do you envision your project evolving after college and in the coming years?
Yeah, wow, that's a big question.
Put you on the spot.
So for Green Speaking, I am very grateful and happy that it's not just me. I have an amazing team of co-founders, friends back in Mexico that have been like instrumental in doing everything we've done these 5 years. So it's been amazing, but it's been most of us just dedicating the free time that we have in between school and work and everything. And that's like the third thing, the volunteering aspect that we do. So it's sometimes hard, but now we expanded. So we have now more members helping us, other volunteers, many of them also college students across the world. So we have more joining us from India and from Kenya, friends from Spain as well. So we're very excited. And we're looking, so we got some funding from NGOs across the States and also here in Canada. And what we want to do this year is we want to do like some more of these local conferences in all of these, because like in Mexico, in Kenya, in India, in Barbados, and we want to, well, like we have had the fortune of meeting a lot of like local based NGOs, because we also believe in what Sulaiman was saying about the importance of like local approaches and having this cultural approach and being very aware of the differences, and that you cannot apply these like universal or strategies that may work in places like Canada or the United States but don't really work in other scenarios. So we want to be able to bring the resources and just have local partners that can lead the conversation and like redirect these resources to campaigns. And so a lot of the stuff we do is also, we have young people come to the conferences and learn how to do the campaign and then put it into action. which is kind of what I had in 2019 that we've been trying to replicate for more young people. So that makes me very hopeful, and more young people joining also makes me hopeful that it's gonna continue being its own thing. So that's something that we're very happy and looking forward to. And in terms of the project, the garbageless groceries one, we're still sending out like the recommendations and very insistent on grocery stores to implement some changes. The only thing here is that all of these grocery store chains at the end are businesses, right? So they operate with profit in mind and with their interest in mind. And what we were hearing is, even though many of the senior leadership or the VPs of sustainability do care about this and would like to see produce bags gone and plastic packaging gone, they're not gonna do this if it means losing customers, right? And if one grocery store takes away plastic bags, but all of the others keep giving them, then they're losing that convenience aspect, as you were mentioning, Emily, before. So unless we have policy there that makes it uniform and like the playing ground even for all of them, then it's hard to see some changes. So we're advocating a lot with policy. So we'll see. Hopefully we get some support there. So we want to continue that conversation and hopefully get more momentum in the coming years to advocate for more intense plastic policies.
Totally. No, I love to hear that. I think you know, addressing policy and having that be a tool is so critical, but also why this like concept of grassroots organizing is impactful just from the beginning. And it's kind of what you're mentioning, Diego, is where there needs to be successful case studies that are happening on a localized level. So we're proving to ourselves and others that this is a viable economic issue, that this is an alternative that we can implement, whatever it is. But we need to be the example, and why when we localize our efforts into community organizing, we are being that example. And it's a lot harder for these businesses, like you're mentioning, Diego, to say, oh no, it's cutting too much into our bottom line. It's like, well, actually, we're seeing this actually be successful in this one example. And so, of course, it's a long way to go from localizing to seeing that big picture impact that we want, but we have to start somewhere. And I feel like you really touched on that, Diego. So I appreciate that. And Pius, you have returned to us. Can you hear me, Pius?
Yes, I can hear you clear. Yeah, I had a
Yay.
technical issue, so I'm sorry.
That is no problem at all. We just kept on going through the questions. I'm so happy that you returned. I'm gonna put you on the spot and ask you a question that I just asked Diego, and that is the work that you're doing locally that you have been doing for the past year. How do you see that growing into the future in the coming years after college? How do you see this program, this community organizing evolve in the future?
Yeah, I'm seeing it coming out well, because it's like we have laid foundations and we have also learned from our mistakes, and just having a reflection on whatever we have been doing and seeing what approaches are also right, because I feel like tackling issues like plastic pollution, for example, is quite a big issue, and multifaceted in a way. So through my initiatives under the Greenify Global, which is an environmental organization that is youth-led, we feel like we have learned a couple of lessons, and we believe that we have the capacity to grow and scale our initiatives, in other regions. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Pius. And I want to throw in another question that we asked the others when you were out. And that is, what has been the biggest challenges that you have faced with working with the community members, of educating them and maybe showing them alternatives? What has been kind of those responses from the community that you had to work through, and how did you succeed in that?
Well, the first one would be resistance to change. because sometimes it's very difficult to get people understand the way you are thinking. So that has been quite a big challenge to say. I mean, just I would say even in general about community conservation, because we are putting in plastic as one of the aspects. So for the people to realize that this is a problem, sometimes it becomes an issue. So for example, for them to change their mindset to say that, okay, you need to reduce on plastic, they may not really understand the bigger picture. But I think that through educating them, there is a quote by Nelson Mandela, and he said that education is the tool to change the society. So I believe that even me as somebody who is doing education, I have to apply I have to apply that to the community and making them understand well, uh, even in, because some of the people may not have gone far with school. Maybe we deal with some community members, local community members. So we have to put it in a language that they understand, to say that this is, I mean, this has an effect in this way. I mean, trying to simplify things without using jargons or being too technical. So I think that is really something that is very important. But also, not only people who haven't really gone far with school, even people who are also educated might also have difficulties. For example, through my through my campus, there have also been issues that I have seen. For example, improper waste disposal, people just littering around yet they are at the university. So it's something that I myself took a responsibility that I should even let the people know, even in my class. I have to put the message clear, but also have conversations around that. And even through the clubs at the university. For example, there is University of Malawi Wildlife and Environmental Student Club, which is doing quite well. And I have also used that as a force to bring in change to the school. So yeah, I would say mindset change as a problem, but I would also talk about financial constraints. Looking at us as university students, sometimes it might be difficult as well to get the right finances so that maybe we can bring out effective change. Because we need to understand that resources are also important. Much as we need to make change, much as we are so passionate to bring in change, but resources are also a factor. So I appreciate what you have done as a glider through the student mini grant. I think that is really important because we young people are the leaders of today, actually. So by equipping us to bring that change through those mini grants, I think it's something that is really, really commendable. Because most of the initiatives may leave aside young people. So we young people are the future. And for example, in my country, young people make part of a big part of the population, meaning that when we educate the young people, it means that we educate the future. Yeah. So even some of the things have been targeting even children. For example, our initiative, permaculture in schools, which has also been targeting little, the kids, because we believe that they will grow with that culture. So it means that we educate the entire population. So let me stop there. Yeah, of course there are other challenges, but yeah,
What
we may
a
have conversations later.
Yeah, and if anyone has questions from what Pius or anyone is saying, feel free to share it in the chat. But Pius, that was so eloquently said. You touched on so many different important topics, but two of the ones that I want to kind of highlight from that I took away is one, you're focusing on meeting the community where they are, recognizing that everyone relates to this issue differently, and being thoughtful of that and then wanting to meet them and make that additional effort to meet them where they are is so powerful in local organizing. And connected on that is just knowing your audience. And all three of you have shared this, being thoughtful of your audience, wanting to, again, meet them where they are, educate them how you see fit based on your own lived experience, which is why this work is so real when you are doing this localized work within the community that you were raised, that you work and live within. It's so powerful. So thank you for sharing that, Pius.
You're welcome.
All right, Sulaiman, thank you for your patience. I would love to hear what challenges you faced in your efforts to educate the community and offer workshops and resources. What have those struggles been and how have you overcome them? I see you got up. No,
Is
that's
this
okay.
me? Or...
Oh, no, sorry, that's Sulaiman.
Okay.
But I think he might have connectivity issues. Oh, I see
Yeah,
him.
exactly. I have. Please, can you come again?
Because I believe I asked Diego the last one about the challenges he's faced. So what challenges have you faced in your in working with the community? Have you seen resistance from these community members, and how have you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, exactly. I think that was my last question.
Oh,
I
okay.
think
I'm so sorry.
exactly. I think that was the question and answer. I answered regarding the internet connectivity and the electricity. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so sorry. I was getting confused once Pius came in. So thank you for redirecting me, Sulaiman. All right.
If I
So
may chime in though, there's a question in the chat from Julio saying, I really appreciate the Sulaiman local community work. And he's asking, how has been the community acceptability of your work, or how has the community accepted or taken in your work, I think is what he's asking.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you very much for this question. I am just seeing it because I off the not chat notifications. So this is a very a great question for me. Do I answer it when I've started the discussion? But I would like to come again. Since we are talking about acceptability of my work in my community. So one thing I can say is that in everything you will do, you have to think globally and act locally. Yeah, exactly. So, by thinking globally and acting locally, you are bringing, the wealth of knowledge that you have, from different high level forums and then initiatives you have been involved with or you have been seeing their work here by breaking it into a simpler language here in your community. So I think that is when I mentioned, there are a lot of skepticism in our community when it comes to something like climate change in general, because they just see it as something they call it is calm, but deep inside they affected almost all of us, either directly or indirectly. So that is when I said we use the variety of approach, like going to religious places, going to markets, and then going to local community leaders, and then working with youth volunteers that are like-minded, just to translate the words into tangible actions. So when you did something like this, so no matter how long it will take, one day that community will understand your work, and then they will appreciate it, and then they will follow it. Because when it comes to climate change in general, not talking of plastics pollution only, you can also convince the community by showing them, you have a farms, and then you have your farm produce there where you cultivate varieties of crops, and then unfortunately these crops might be facing sometimes flooding, they might be facing drought. So all these things, they lead to it lead to so many deficiency in their agricultural produce, which they use for their daily lives and activities. So then we said, what caused this? If we said drought, or we said flash flooding or flooding, then what caused it? Since they affected their produce, then it is climate change that affected it. So that is the kind of languages we use to translate what is globally into locally for them to understand, and then to know that this is something real, and then it is affecting us either directly or indirectly by our day-to-day activities, and then we need to come together and take actions. So that is how I approach the communities in order to make my work acceptable for them to understand what I'm doing, and then the impact it will have on their lives. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And it makes sense, again, knowing your community and then framing it differently to meet them. Again, I'm going to repeat it a million times, to meet them where they are. And you brought up a really important part about framing, that maybe one way of framing it, like Diego had mentioned, you're saving the sea turtles by not using this bag or something, framing it that way. But then you brought up another framing that is very impactful, and that's bringing in the monetary part of it, that we all need to survive. We all need to make ends meet. And like you had said, that example of farmers' crops, the effects of climate change are directly affecting their bottom line and their profit. And so I love that you brought that up, because that is a really powerful tool when we're talking about these really complex issues.
Yeah, exactly. It is.
And so we just have a few more minutes left. And my last question to our three panelists, and we'll start with Diego first, is what one piece of advice would you give students watching this, whether here live or watching this recording in the coming weeks? What is one advice you would give to students listening? Diego, you may go first if you can.
Yes, I don't want this to sound generic or basic, but I think they should really start doing something like immediately, like now. They should not wait for like later on when they're adults, or because that's what I thought before going to this boot camp, that I would become a lawyer and then in the future do something and do positive for my community, for the planet, etc. And I didn't know that I could start doing something being 16, 17, 18. So I think it's super important to start taking action, even if it's imperfect. And if it's locally, if it's small, that adds a lot. And if we all do that, then the change is magnificent. So I would encourage them all to see the gaps, see what's missing, see where they can contribute, because we all have different skills, different interests, different talents, different passions. So like definitely they can contribute positively to any cause, and they can just, like, if there's a problem, it's better that they're part of the solution, right? And they should start now. So that's my advice.
I love it. It's overplayed because it's true and it's accurate, and we all need to be hearing that reminder. So that is a great advice to give away, Diego. All right, Sulaiman, if you wanted to go next, what's one piece of advice you would share with youth who are listening in? You might be on mute, I believe. There we go.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you very much for this question. So I can say it, to me, for students and youth, considering environmental research, specifically related to plastic pollution. So I can say to them, one piece of advice I have is that, don't be afraid, to start small and build upon your success. Focus on what, you can achieve within your community, and globally expand your impact. Also, you have to remember to prioritize your well-being and find a balance between your work and personal life, because environmental activism can be demanding, but it is crucial to maintain your own mental and physical health to sustain your effort in the long term. So thank you so much.
I feel like you were giving me that advice directly, because I needed to hear that too. So important. Mental well-being and focusing.
I'm honored to impacted a global change maker like you. So I'm very excited for this, and thank you very much. I also learned a lot from you guys.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you. All right, and Pius, what's one piece of advice you would give youth and students listening in today?
Okay, I would say you are never too small to make a difference, and this is the time that you can do something. And uh, being at college or being in school is one of the best ways or the easier way to get started, because through that you can easily mobilize people and you can together make a meaningful change. So I would say that it's better to start now, and you can bring out effective change even in the little actions, but they do matter. But it's also a way to even raise your profile in whatever you do. So through that you can even connect to leaders and different people from the community by being a student. Yeah. So yeah, meaningful change is possible even though you're a student.
Yeah. Like education is power. The quote that you had shared earlier, I mean, it always goes back to that. And so thank you for returning back to that. And I want to share, Shannon in the chat had asked a really unique question. And I wanted to just open the floor to you three, whoever would like to answer if you feel compelled to. And she's asking, can any of you speak about how you might encourage people to see their individual relationship with their environment that's encouraging the idea of nature as a stakeholder, not just us as individuals? Oh, I care about the planet because I want to protect myself. Like, do you have any experience in talking to people about nature is an incredible, important stakeholder to protect to begin with? And seeing, she mentioned the culture of family and including in family nature itself. So if any of you have any things to share or answer to that, I would open the floor to hear that.
Okay, I just want to say something about that. So we actually doing a course on education and development in Africa. So I just wanted to add something that we were discussing on what development is. So uh, we came up with the definition where we were saying that uh, development should look at should look at humans, but also the environment. That is, much as the human beings are the environment, being part of the environment, but it's like most times we often neglect uh, like the biodiversity or other aspects of nature. So I think I would say maybe just something that to think about, that when we are trying to speak about nature, we shouldn't just talk about things that affect us as human beings, but also including other stakeholders in nature or other parts of the nature family. Because when we talk about, for example, the rivers being polluted with plastic, it's like fish and other aquatic species are also affected. It's not only about us. So I think one of the problems is we only think about like these things are maybe going to affect us as human beings. But I think it's high time we started looking at things holistically and looking at them that they also affect other aspects of nature. We are not the only people. We are not. I mean, life doesn't only center around us as human beings, but we need also to maybe in terms of our advocacy also talk about other species. Maybe the more we think about water, the more we think about the air, or the more we think about other species. And another interesting aspect is, I would give an example of, let's say in our society, there's actually a human to animal conflict, in the sense that we have monkeys in the mountains, and then people have destroyed trees, fruit trees, and then this is what is happening. The mountains are actually eating people's harvest. They are moving out from the mountains and then eating people's harvest, because we have caused the problem, because they don't have food, and then we are now becoming bitter to the monkeys. So that means that I think it's just a matter of looking at the balance, that everything affects the other, and looking at it holistically. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I wanted to to say. Sorry, maybe for taking longer to speak about that, but I just feel like that's very interesting aspect to look at.
No, I mean, you never apologize for taking up too much space. That was such incredible insight. And Shannon, if you wanted to give her, oh, I see. Thank you, Pius. Shannon had mentioned in the chat. That was such a great question, and that was a great answer, Pius. I know we're a little bit over time, so I just want to do a quick round of applause to our panelists. I know Diego had to get going, but thank you so much for sharing your insight and your wisdom. And when we say youth are the future and you are the future, we mean that, but we mean that not that it's only on you. All of us are working together. We are carrying this with you, and we're here to support you. And I just want to remind you all of that before we get going today.